Hello, everyone, and it's Mercy here, and welcome to Depression Quest. Now, I know you guys may not want to see this, but this is an actual issue in the world that people actually suffer from, so I decided to get this game to show you exactly what happens. Now, right here it says, this game is not meant to be a fun or lighthearted experience, which this isn't supposed to be for this episode. If you are currently suffering from the illness and are easily triggered, please be aware that this game uses dark depictions of people in very dark places. If you are suicidal, please stop playing this game and visit the suicide prevention hotline and talk to someone. And I will leave a link to those in the description below, and hopefully we can help you. So, the goal of this game is twofold. Firstly, you want to illustrate as clearly as possible what depression is like, so that it may better be understood by people without it. Hopefully, this game can be something to spread awareness and fight against the social stigma and misunderstandings about depression that the sufferers face. Secondly, our hope is that the presenting as real as a simulation of depression as possible. Other sufferers will come to know that they aren't alone and hopefully derive some measure of comfort from that. So, we are going to continue. You can pause the video here and read everything if you'd like, but we're going to continue and show you what goes on. So, let's begin. It is early on a Monday morning. You are a mid-20s human being. You have a significant other named Alex, who you are rather fond of, that you have been seeing exclusively for the past few months. The rest of your social circle consists of a variety of friends and acquaintances, some of whom you've met at your day job, which is a little boring but pays the rent. You'd like to be doing more with your life as your parents would, but you're still in the process of figuring out what that means and how to get to it. You're also dealing with the motivation issues that sometimes makes dealing with these things difficult. You feel like this is probably your fault, and on bad days can feel inwardly angry and down on yourself for being lazy. You're not quite sure how you can break out of it, or how other people deal with these feelings and seem so very functional. You spend a lot of nights fixating on things about this, but never seem to do anything about it rather than lose sleep. It's an unseasonably warm Wednesday evening. You spent the past few hours at work. The past week or so, you found your job motivation flagging more than usual. You've been in a fog practically all day today, simply going through the motions without realizing even what you've been doing half the time. And yet, time seemed to be moving at half the speed. You're so checked out that when your boss approaches you to tell you that it's dead and you can go home early, it barely registers. As you walk home, the streets hiss from the recent rainfall. You know your significant other will be in classes until late, another couple hours at least. You briefly consider using the serendipitous solitude to catch up on that project that you've been working haphazardly for the past few months. As soon as you think about the work that awaits you at home, you can feel the panic creeping in from the back of your brain, unbidden. All you can think about is how incredibly far behind you are, and the amount of work seems nothing less than insurmountable. By the time you arrive home and change out of your uncomfortable work clothes, the stress is weighing down on you like a heavy wet wool blanket. Your computer seems to be staring you down from your desk. You want to sit down and work, but mere the thought of trying to work sends stress levels flying. More than anything, you suddenly feel absolutely exhausted, and feel a strong sense of desire to simply hide in bed. Do you? 1. Order some food, grab a drink, and hunker down for the night of work, which we seem to not be able to click. Reluctantly sit down at your desk and try to make yourself do something. Turn on the TV, telling yourself you just need a quick half hour to unwind from work. Crawl in bed, you're so stressed and overwhelmed you couldn't possibly accomplish anything anyways. And you are depressed, interaction is exhausting, and you're becoming more and more withdrawn. You're currently not seeing a therapist, you're currently not taking any medication for depression. So, to try and figure out what to do, we are going to go with the second one, to try and work and see. You make a stop at your fridge, turn your favorite playlist on, and sit down to start working. You open the last file you were working on, and as soon as your hands touch the keyboard, your mind goes blank. All the motivation and ideas you had when you arrived at home vanish in a flash. Your brain seizes up, and you find yourself physically incapable of any sort of productive thought. You take a break to loosen up, popping into your email box, Twitter, and various other internet-based distraction fodder. Frustratingly, this pattern continues throughout the course of the evening. As soon as you try to focus on your work, your brain diverts all of its energy away from the task at hand. While you keep flipping back to your work, you find the sheer mental effort involved in keeping your brain focused is overwhelming and tiring. A few Twitter arguments, YouTube videos, and sparse amounts of actual work later, your playlist flips back to track 1 and the ice in your glass has been all melted, diluting the last dregs of the coke you were nursing. You took a look at the clock and realized that few hours have passed since you sat down to work and you've made negligible progress. I can just wake up early tomorrow and catch up, you think to yourself as you climb into bed, even though you know that never actually happens. You are very depressed. You spend a large amount of time sleeping, hating yourself, and have very little energy of motivation. You are not currently seeing a therapist. You are currently not taking any medication. It's a mild Friday afternoon. Alex calls you from one of her classes telling you that there's going to be a really awesome birthday party tonight at her apartment that one of her roommates is throwing. You've hung out with his roommate a few times with Alex, and you get along really well but aren't particularly close. You don't have work in the morning, and nothing else particularly to do tonight. You're feeling kind of run down, but you've been fatigued most of the time lately. You mention that you are feeling ill because you're not sure how else to explain the feelings to someone else, and say that you aren't sure you can make it tonight. There's a second of silence over your phone, but you can swear you hear the sound of your partner's face fall. She tries to convince you anyway. You haven't seen her this week, and she sounds pretty insistent that you come over. She even drops a few suggestively worded hints that you can stay over with them tonight after the party. What do? And it still says these 3 things, so we're going to try to agree to go. Let's see what happens. You agree to go even though you're really not feeling social. You know it's important to Alex and you'd really like to see her. Seeing her does make you feel better sometimes, and you hope this is the case tonight even if it means dealing with all the usual social anxiety. The time to leave rolls around and you grab your overnight bag. Alex's apartment is a short walk away, and there are already people hanging out on the porch. You feel your chest tighten as you approach the building and try to steel your nerves. You quickly find your partner chatting away with the birthday girl, and Alex immediately lightens up when she sees you. I'm so happy you came. I wasn't sure if you were going to make it. A young man taps her on the shoulder and she turns back to you to apologize and let you know they have something to do for the party. Alex hands you a beer and plants a kiss on your cheek before going out to deal with whatever came up. As you look around, you don't see anyone you recognize. So, we can't do the first one, as usual. Let's see. We don't know what to choose, so we're gonna put the bag in the room and wait for a while. You take your beer and shift through the crowd until you arrive at Alex's room. The room is actually empty other than partygoers, and you sit on her bed as you set your bag down. Thankful for the personal space and feeling a lot less claustrophobic, you mess around on your phone while you sip your beer. You keep telling yourself you'll go back out 5 more minutes, but every time the time rolls around you go back to the panic. You feel the panic creep in, and you stay rooted to the spot. You figured no one here knows you anyway, so it's unlikely that you'll be missed. A few minutes later, Alex comes into the room. Oh, there you are. I was wondering where you'd gone off to. Figured I might find you here. She sits down on the bed next to you, buzzed enough to be slurring slightly. I'm really glad you turned up tonight. To be honest, I didn't think you'd show. It's really cool you did, really. You know she meant it lovingly, but you're not quite sure how you feel about that statement. It's a little afternoon on a muggy Saturday. Your mother has come over for a surprise visit, claiming loudly that she doesn't see you enough, so she decided to invite herself over. As you converse, she walks around your place, and you get the distinct impression that you're being inspected. So what's going on with you lately? She asks abruptly. Taken somewhat aback by this left fielder, you tell her that you're not sure what she means. She repeats the question, saying that you haven't seemed like yourself lately. She gestures the dirty dishes piled in the sink and the notes that you fact you haven't called or visited in a while. Your resistance only seems to spur on her more. She pressures you, asking if you're having problems at work or with Alex. You're beginning to feel increasingly battered by her sudden, well-meaning but overwhelming inquisition. Under her questions, you become increasingly uncomfortable. You want to be able to explain to her how you've been feeling, but the truth is you're not really sure yourself. Nothing horrific has happened at work, or with your significant other or friends, or anything like that. But all at the same time, you cannot deny that lately you've felt just drained and as though you're not really here. You wish you could tell your mother these things, but she hasn't been approachable about negative emotions in the past. She is the kind of person who holds the opinion that the solution to any problem is to simply try harder and maintain a positive attitude. A stance that has reared its head in the past conversations when you began to explore the subject with her. You know she's unlikely to be understanding, and you feel the energy drain out of you when you imagine what would happen if you managed to blurt out everything you are feeling. What do? Let's try to be honest. You attempt to tell your mother how you're feeling, despite the initial misgivings that you are about doing so. Finding the right words of how you're feeling feels like you're trying to untangle Christmas lights, searching for the dead bulb in the cluttered mess. She watches you intently, and oddly sighs before you can articulate anything. Unfortunately, she reacts predictably. An attitude like that won't get you anywhere. You need to work harder at getting what you want instead of sitting around and feeling sad about it. Nothing good would happen unless you make it happen. She isn't angry or spiteful as she tells you this. You try to explain it not as a matter of that, but you can tell that you're not getting anywhere. The frustration chokes the words in your throat, and you give up on trying to push the subject further. You know she's giving you the advice that makes sense to her, and genuinely wants the best for you. However, she doesn't understand that it's not as simple as somehow deciding to be positive or work harder. It's that those things aren't viable options because of these feelings. You accept your defeat, and the conversation drifts onto other subjects. She leaves after chiding you to call her more often and take better care of yourself. You sigh heavily as you close the door behind her to spend the next few hours laying in bed, staring at the ceiling. It is a lazy Sunday morning. You are idly clicking around online as your phone rings. Sam, a coworker of yours that you're friendly with, asks how you are and makes hurried small talk with you. You typically only ever talk to him on the phone when one of you needs a shift covered, so it's slightly awkward. You're waiting in anticipation for him to ask you to come in on such short notice when he veers the conversation in a completely different direction. How do you feel about cats? He asks. Mine had kittens a few weeks ago, and I'm having an awfully hard time finding a home for the last one of the litter. You don't have any pets, right? It takes you a moment to process the new information, and you're caught off guard as he begins to earnestly try to sell you on the idea of taking this last kitten off his hands. It's not something that you had specifically considered before, and he seems fairly insistent. She's a real sweetheart, and she really loves people. She's got all her shots taken care of, and the vet said she's healthy as a horse. I can bring her over to your place tonight if you're interested. You look around your apartment and try to picture a cat in it as he continues to tell you about how cute she is. You tell him that he is kind all of a sudden, and that you don't have anything for the kitten set up here. Oh, don't worry about that. I can bring over a litter box and food and all that since you'd really be helping me out of the fix. It's the least I could do. I just don't want to have to put her in a shelter. You can't help but feel like you're being in a guilt trip, but you decide to give it some serious consideration. It does get awfully lonely around in your apartment, and it might feel less empty with a cat around. However, since you've been feeling so down, it might not be a good idea to take on the responsibility of a cat if they are fairly low maintenance. So, let's see. We can't take the cat knowing full well we can take care of it, and we can't decline even though you'd be taking care of it, even though you're not much of a cat person. Um, we're gonna become a cat owner. Oh, look at the cute kitty. You accept the offer of a kitten and hangs up shortly after making arrangements for your coworker to drop her off tonight. After hanging up, you worry about it as if you suddenly take it on a responsibility you can't handle, and hope you don't make a small animal suffer for it. You're not entirely sure what to expect, and you spend the rest of your afternoon researching cat care online and trying to think someone of the name. The evening rolls around and you hear a knock at your door, startling you out of reading Wikipedia entirely too hard. You take possession of a small, terrified black and white kitten in a carrier, along with everything you need to start taking care of her. You take her into your bedroom, close the door, and open the door of the carrier excitedly. She cowers in the back of it and you back off. Feeling slightly defeated, you remember what you researched on introduction, a kitten, into a new home and leave her alone and go mess around on your computer, hopefully checking over your shoulder every so often to see if she has come out yet. She hides inside her carrier, periodically making sorrowful cat howls long enough for you to start worrying that she already doesn't like you. But by the time you've gotten to bed, she's curled up by the foot of it, eyeing you nervously before falling asleep. Over the next few days, you gain her trust and she becomes affectionately following you around, sleeping on you, and hopping up on you anytime you sit down to do some work. It's late Friday afternoon, and quitting time is just around the corner. A bright, clear day is given way to a still, temperate evening. You can hear your coworkers all around you anxiously making plans for their evenings and weekends, but you're looking forward to just going home and resting after what's turned out to be a very long and taxing work week. Sorry for not reading clearly. Just before the end of your shift, you get a call from Alex. It seems a group of your mutual friends are heading to a nearby pub for dinner and drinks to celebrate the end of the week, and they want to know if you'd like to come along. You tentatively tell her that you're emotionally exhausted from the work week and a social outing like that would just take too much out of you today. You encourage her to go and have a good time, since you know it's been a while since she's been out with some friends. But the effort feels futile since you know that she isn't going to go without you. A couple hours later, the two of you find yourselves in a familiar position. On the couch watching comedy shows on Netflix, a box of pizza open on the coffee table in front of you. As you look at the couch at her, you start to feel anxious. You feel bad about effectively forcing the two of you to stay in tonight, again. While you two are always appreciative of your partner's efforts to take your feelings into account and help make sure you're socially comfortable, you sincerely worry that you are holding her back from enjoying a more fulfilling relationship. While she does seem to enjoy spending time with you, as the two of you sit in comfortable, almost content silence, watching old shows you've seen the 2 or 3 times before, you have an increasing fear that your relationship is becoming one-sided and weighs more and more heavily on you. You feel more than ever like a burden or a ward to her, and it's virtually impossible for you to see what the value you could possibly offer her in the return. Worst of all, this nagging fear has made you feel more self-conscious than ever, withdrawing ever inwards, and you started to pull away from even Alex herself. What do you do? We're gonna ask her, because again, we still can't do the first two things. So, we're gonna ask her. You look over at Alex, who hasn't noticed you watching her yet, and you try to parse the expression on her face. You worry it's one of the sheer boredom and bare tolerance. You wonder if she's thinking about all the fun things she could have been doing tonight if she wasn't trapped on this couch with you, ordering from one of the same 3 takeout places you always order from. A sense of disappointing creeps over you as you picture what the night could have been if you had just accepted the invitation she had made earlier. I know this is a pretty boring Friday night for you. Are you really happy being with me? Being like this? She turns to you, forehead wrinkled. Why do you ask me that so often? You feel her body stiffen and pull away from yours just a little. Well, I mean, you start, but you are unable to try and think of how to answer. I know it's not what you'd usually be up to. Alex frowns. What do you mean by that? I just mean you usually like going out and doing things, partying and stuff, you know. She sighs and falls against the couch. It's not like I want to do those things all the time. I like nights in too, just like everyone else. She turns to you, frustration wearing on her face. Sometimes I swear it feels like you don't know me at all. It's not that, I just. Your voice trails off, and you notice that she has an exasperated look on her face and that you have seen once or twice when you have conversations like this. Conversations where you're poorly expressing your own self doubt and insecurities, seeking reassurance but feeling like you're making things worse. She sighs again, this time louder, turning towards the flickering screen. I like spending time with you, okay? If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. The annoyed tone in her voice makes you think otherwise, but you take it as a sign that you should probably drop it for now, and you feel badly for upsetting things. It's a breezy Sunday afternoon. You've allowed Amanda, an old friend from school that is in town for the weekend, to talk to you into leaving the house for coffee and catch up. You meet her in a small cafe and talk about what you've been up to since you've last seen each other, and you can't help but feel that they're a lot more accomplished and interesting than you are while listening to them talk about their life after school. When it's your turn to brief on them on your activities, you feel anxious and ashamed, and give a very abbreviated version. You try to talk about your job as little as possible, and you feel incredibly boring while you describe it, despite her expression's sincere interest in you and your life. Amanda has known you long enough to read your mood and tone of voice. She leans in to ask a question and gently touching your hand, a look of genuine concern on her face. What's wrong? Do you? Uh, insist, be defensive, or notice that your hands are shaking. Um, for us, we would be defensive. Do you think something's wrong with me? You start to feel incredibly insecure as the realization creeps over you. Something you had said in your conversation made it seem like you were defective to her, and you find yourself being incredibly exposed. Amanda pulls away and apologizes profusely. Oh no, I didn't mean anything by that. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You apologize as well and say that it's probably because you haven't been sleeping well. She tries to steer the conversation to one of mutual interest while you're still feeling incredibly embarrassed and vulnerable. You find it hard to focus on what she's actually saying because you're busy analyzing your behavior in your own head while making small talk. The awkward undertone remains, and the outing ends soon after that. It's a glaringly sunny Monday, and one of the few days that your brother Malcolm is in town, and free long enough for you two to actually see each other. You have a dental appointment that day, but you make plans for him to pick you up afterward. Your appointment takes a little longer than expected because your dentist tells you that you've been starting grinding your teeth in your sleep to a worrying degree. Given how nearly everything in your life has been feeling enormous and stressful lately, this doesn't come as a surprise to you. He suggests that you try to reduce your stress levels and fits you for a night guard. It feels awkward and too big for your mouth, and you feel embarrassed looking at your puffed face in the mirror with it in. You finish up the appointment in a hurry and leave about half an hour overdue from meeting your always punctual brother in a parking lot. You finish up as quickly as possible and leave the building to scan the parking lot for your brother's car, but you don't see his old Civic anywheres. You pass by a blue Camaro and jump as it beeps at you, causing you to jump in surprise. It takes you a moment for you to realize, but it's Malcolm in the driver's seat. You hop in the passenger seat and compliment him on his new ride, and he mentions that it's a perk of the promotion he's recently obtained at work. He starts telling you about how much more money he's making, how his career is really taking off, and how he's starting to look at houses with his wife soon. You clutch the bag, continuing the night guard in your hand, and you feel yourself clench your teeth as you think of your crummy apartment and how long it's been since you've been able to take a day off with work without having to worry about making ends meet. He's only 2 years older than you, but it feels like he's eons ahead of you in other aspects of your life. So, he asks, how did your apartment go? Did you get the drill full of holes, or what? A sense of shame creeps over you. Uh, what are we gonna choose? We'll tell him about the dentist appointment. Actually, no. And we're gonna do this. Oh no, just a cleaning. Your voice chills off as you stare out of the passenger side's window, head resting on your hand. There's a brief silence and you can feel your brother's eyes on you. You hear him take a breath, preparing to say something, then hesitate. Though you may not be exceptionally close anymore, you know they can tell you're holding something back. You brace yourself for probing questions you really don't have the energy to answer. Hey, why don't we get something fancy for dinner? My treat. You feel like a little kid again, being looked after by your big brother. A part of you prinkles up and feels pathetic for this, but the larger part of you that is stressed out, exhausted, and grateful for the familiar comfort of family. Malcolm never presses you further for the night, and takes your mind off things for a while. It is early on a Wednesday morning. Lately, you develop a nasty habit of waking up 10 to 20 minutes before your alarm rings, and unfortunately today is no exception. You lay in bed, each minute ticking closer and closer to wake up time, and passing on a swelling wave of ever-encroaching dread. Sooner than you would like, your alarm blares with caustic inevitability. Your frantic pound the snooze button, and then retreat under your blankets as if the warmth of your comforter can shield you from the passage of time. You almost always have difficulty rising from bed, but today the simple task seems nothing short of Heraclin. After several snooze cycles, you decide that you just can't deal with work today. You're incapable of even rousing yourself from bed, let alone getting into work and having to force yourself through the workday. Not to mention, you've snoozed so many times that it would be impossible to make it on time now anyways. We're gonna have to call our boss and tell him we won't be in today. In spite the fact that you know it's your job and that you should go, you keep fighting yourself every step of the way. Every time you resolve to climb out of bed and just go, your body seems to get heavier and your head gets foggier, and you find yourself unable to actually make yourself move. You grab your phone and dial your boss's number, hoping that it's early enough that he won't be there and you can just leave a message. Fortunately, after a couple of rings, a voicemail picks up and you leave a message explaining that you're sick and won't be in today. As you hang up your phone, you worry that perhaps your message sounds like a lame excuse. You hope your boss won't call or email you to follow up with your message, but for now you are too foggy to do much of any sort of thinking and eventually fall back into a sleep that is both heavy and restless with your kitten curled up at your feet, occasionally repositioning as you toss and turn. Also, we're sorry that we're not speaking clearly. This actually weighs a ton on us as well, so bear with us please. When you wake up the next morning, short of feeling well rested, you actually feel more stressed out. While it was definitely nice to get a break from work, you're now faced with a new problem that I hadn't considered before. You still have to go to work today. While you aren't having the same problem physically getting out of bed you were having yesterday, the prospect of having to face your boss after missing a day of work does not seem appealing in the slightest. You worry that your absence won't be as believable or legitimate, that your coworkers and boss will still think you're trying half-assedly to play hooky. Or worse, you fear that someone will actually ask you what's wrong, being caught in that instance and having either to make up for being half-baked excuse or worse, that they'll see right through you and know, quickly, has your mood matching the drizzly weather outside. You know that you have to go to work, but your fear of being perceived as either lazy or defective is making you regret yesterday's decision to take the day off, and ultimately make you feel worse about it. It's 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and you have work in the morning. You'll roll over to see the sickly green glow of the time displayed on your LED alarm clock and let out an exasperated sigh. You've been trying to fall asleep for over 3 hours now, and to no avail. Every time your head hits the pillow, you're overcome with anxious thoughts that wrap themselves up around each other. Worries about your job lead to worries about your future, lead to worries about your very identity, and you're unable to shake them off long enough to doze off. Your eyes won't even stay shut as your mind races through imagined scenarios going horribly wrong, which you promptly attribute to your general worthlessness. Ugh, our eyes are starting to hurt from reading this. See what it's doing to us? Oh, goodness. Oh, we only have one choice. Let me continue reading. Sorry. Your thoughts run too fast for you to come to a satisfying conclusion on any one of them. Your room is completely silent, but the silence has given way to a loud static noise rattling around inside your head. Your heart beats loudly, and you're worrying it's beating a little too fast. You worry that if it focuses too strongly on your racing heart, you'll freak out hard enough to have a heart attack. You have to be awake for work in a mere 8 hours, and you know your performance has been sagging lately, and that this situation won't help one bit. All we can do is go to our computer. Huh, that's weird. You get out of bed and head to your desk. Laying in bed with nothing but your thoughts to keep you company makes you feel like you're going insane. The harshness of the light coming from the screen makes you squint as you turn it on, despite how often you find yourself in the exact situation. There have been so many nights lately just like this, and the screen is hurting our eyes too, so we're going to turn the brightness down just a little bit. Sorry. You're up again late, I see. Yeah, can't sleep. Again. Thinking too much again? Thinking? You guessed it. Want to talk about it? You end up talking with Attic for quite some time about how you've been feeling. He's always been easy to talk to about personal matters, and the added security of talking online helps. But being able to rethink what you say as you type out and check before you send it helps you gather your thoughts, and you find it less intimidating in a way to type it all into a prompt than say it out loud. I don't want to be the guy who thinks they can diagnose something because I read a Wikipedia article, but I think it kind of sounds like you might have depression. You should talk to someone about it, like a doctor. You pause. You're not sure if it's how tired you feel or being frustrated that you mention mentally eating yourself away earlier in the night, but what he is saying rings true. Maybe you should see a doctor about this. We can do some research to see if there's a good doctor near you. It's not like you're going to be back to sleep anytime soon anyway. Might as well do something while you're awake. We're going to talk to someone just in case. So we're going to do the last option. Okay, let's find you a doctor then. Just remember, there's nothing wrong with having depression. You wouldn't be ashamed to have bronchitis or something. So there's no reason to be ashamed if your brain that's sick instead. You Google around with Attic after a bit of searching, you find a doctor that has gotten really good reviews. You make note of it and tell Attic you plan on calling her in the morning before work. You end up going to bed after that with a silent sense of accomplishment. Your kitten pads over and curls up at your feet, with the thought of maybe feeling better soon on your mind. You try not to get your hopes up as you drift into sleep. Again, sorry for not reading clearly. You groggily grab your morning coffee and scoot your rapidly growing kitten off your coffee chair, and despite her protests as usual, sit down at your desk and check your email. You notice the note you left yourself a few days ago with the therapist's number on it. You've been somewhat putting off calling her purely out of nervousness, but you feel like you should probably make the decision to do it or throw away the note out and stop stressing yourself over it. Your kitten curls up in your lap as you consider what to do. We are going to call because it's what we said what we were going to do. That's why we made the note in the first place. So, you sit and stare at the note for a long while before you rip the post-it off and pick up your phone. If it's possible to think that they can really help you, you should at least give it a try. While you listen to the phone ring, your mind races. What if you are really mentally ill? What the therapist tells you you're full-blown crazy? Would it be worse than being told that you're actually fine and you're not just being a huge baby about being an adult? Your mind latches onto the last thought and you feeling foolish. Being worthless isn't a mental illness, you're just a sad sack. Before you can bring yourself to hang up, you're listening to the jarringly chipper voice of the receptionist. You double check that they'll take your insurance and book an appointment relatively painlessly. Before you know it, you're standing in front of the therapist's office on the day of your appointment. What do you do? We're going to go in, but we are unsure of what to expect. The Science of Life by H.G. Wells. You have your first session with your new therapist. I can't seem to say that word correctly. Dr. Susan Melville, a tall woman in her mid-40s with a disarming demeanor and painted eyes with the start of the slightest smile lines. She makes you feel comfortable fairly easy, which is a pleasant surprise after all of your anxiety over the appointment. As you leave, you make a second appointment. You're still skeptical about all of this, but you figure you might as well see where this goes. The hardest part, it seems, was taking the first step. You're still not sure if and how you're going to tell your family or your partner, but you figure you'll deal with it when the time comes. Either way, you feel relieved that you managed to see this through instead of being paralyzed and worry over it. Even if nothing comes out of it, you did something you said you would do instead of flacking out or running away. You're emotionally exhausted when you get home and collapse into bed. You sleep better that night than you have in a week, and you're not sure if it's because you were so tired when you got home or if it's because of the therapist. Oh, this has changed. So you spend some time at a therapist's couch. You're having difficulty finding the motivation to continue going to your sessions. Okay, so this has changed now that we have actually gone to the therapist. Alrighty. It's a chilly Thursday night and you've just gotten off work. This has felt like one of the longest days you've faced in recent memory. Even though nothing exceptional had happened, a ton of minor things kept going wrong, and coworkers had tried your patience throughout the day. You considered leaving work early, but the last thing you wanted to do was deal with your insufferable boss on top of everything else. Excuse me, sorry. You're lost in thought on the commute at home, and your feelings of frustration both in your life and the world around you as you build and run into your minor annoyances like something bumping into you really hard as they walk by. By the time you get home, you're exhausted, and remember that these feelings were ones you identified as a negative feedback loop with your therapist. These pent-up feelings aren't dying down, and they are eating at you. You open your front door and stare at your apartment. An overwhelming feeling of exhaustion overcomes you, and you feel like your energy levels are low enough that you'll likely settle into a single activity tonight. What do? Let's reach out to someone. Your head feels too noisy, and you need to trade it for some actual conversation. Your therapist did say that it was important to reach out to your support network, and you might as well give it a shot. Who do you call? We're going to talk to Alex for tonight, because we hope to try and explain stuff to her so she can actually help us. You dial Alex, who picks up after only 2 rings. You ask if she has time to talk, and she tells you that she's just hanging around in her PJs and is actually somewhat bored for once due to her being caught up on her coursework. You try to figure out where to start with how you're feeling and are overcome with missing her face. You ask if she feels like grabbing some dinner, and you notice her barely contained surprise and delight in the other end of the line. You meet about half an hour later at an expensive diner not far from your apartment. While the food is not great, you're surprised by how much your mood seems to have elevated just being in her company. While at first you were extremely hesitant to talk about your job situation for fear of being burdensome or sounding like a whiner, you see her listening intently to you with what even you seem excuse me, sorry. And I lost my thought. You see her listening intently to you with what even to you seems to be a genuine concern. After winding down with a beer, you cautiously open up a little bit more about your feelings surrounding your job and how drained it leaves you feeling. How you feel like you're simply existing, selling the days of your life for no real purpose. You surprise even yourself when you start talking about how frustrated and stymied you feel by your job, and how you used to feel passionately about things, but it feels like all your energy and capacity for creativity is getting leached out of you each and every workday. You can't remember how long it's been since you've externalized this much raw emotion. The two of you spent several hours in the diner booth, long after you've half eaten your food was cleared and the waitress stopped refilling your coffee cups. As you get up to leave, a sudden wave of self-consciousness washes over you. Sorry. And you suddenly feel incredibly awkward. Then Alex stands up and grabs you tightly around your waist. You realize that, short of boring her with your seemingly endless rants, she's simply to have you gotten a chance to spend time, real time, with you. It's been by all accounts incredibly too long since you've allowed yourself to open up like this to them. And there's almost a palpable feeling of closeness you have allowed yourself to hold on to as you go to bed that night. Here we are. So this has changed again. You are seeing a therapist even though you doubt anything she says can make you feel better. Last time it was we were trying to skip more sessions. And the first one and third one are still the same. Sorry, I don't know how long this video is supposed to be, so please bear with us and we're trying to explain what goes on. So let me get back to reading. It is an utterly nondescript Wednesday afternoon, the type of afternoon that would be completely fade from memory unless one made an active effort to preserve it. As it has become a routine on Wednesdays, you are sitting on the couch of Dr. Melview's office. You mild surprise, she begins the session by breaking her characteristic therapist silence and begins speaking up right away. I wanted to start by saying that I think it's great you decided to come see me. It's an incredibly important first step, she begins. I wanted to take some time today to talk about the possibility of supplementing or substituting your treatments with medication. The mention of medication makes your ears perk up and you feel your heart rate increasing. She continues. Many people find adding a pharmacological element to their treatment to be very helpful, and some even prefer to take drugs, completely eliminating their need to visit a therapist at all. Providing you rely on your support network and are still reaching out to people, I would prefer it if we kept talking should you choose to start medication, so that I can monitor your progress and adjust as needed, but the choice is ultimately yours. I just want to run the option by you to gauge what your thoughts on the matter might be. What shall we do? Because now we can finally choose anything on here, so... We're going to go with the first one because we're going to continue talking with her and we're going to see if the medication will help. And nothing has changed in the bottom here. So we're going to do this prescription. Take one tablet, I don't know if it's a day or every few hours. Okay, so let's see. You think the matter over long and hard. It's strange to think that recently none of this sort of thing was even on your radar, and here you are now being asked to make a decision about it. You're both skeptical and nervous, still getting over the initial shock of even being talking to a therapist. Still, over the years you've done enough entry-level reading on the subject to know that if it doesn't help, At least it probably won't hurt, right? After an intense and protracted period of initial vacillation, I do not understand what that word is. You decide to bite the bullet and go for it. You tell Dr. Melville that you'd like to try the medication in addition to your therapy, and you spend about half an hour going on over what you'll be taking and what you should expect from it. Thinking back on the decision later, you're pretty sure you had your fist tightly clenched the whole way through. So, now the bottom one has finally changed. You have started taking medication, you are hoping that it will work, but you aren't optimistic and are worried about the side effects. As one would be. We had a chance to take medication once, but we sort of rejected it, and we kind of feel bad about that situation. It's a Wednesday evening, and you're visiting your parents' house for a holiday. It's one of those handful of times during the year that you drive out to visit your old hometown, and you've seen the random people you had gone to school with around town. Whenever bumping into them, the usual short versions of what you've done since graduating are exchanged. You've gone through a few of these today and have been very aware of how much you feel you haven't accomplished. When you were in high school, you had much larger plans, and you feel like you haven't failed to manifest most of them. Even if you had managed to, you've largely lost interest in what you thought you wanted to do growing up. Now, you're not really sure what you want to do, and you felt like you were lacking the ambition or the drive to figure it out. Everyone you've caught up with seems to be much happier than you, like they've got their lives all figured out, and you've kind of feeling like a failure by comparison. Your brother Malcolm arrives with his wife in tow shortly, before you all sit down at dinner. He's been traveling for his job lately, and you haven't seen him since the day he picked you up from the dentist. Your parents haven't seen him since before then. During dinner, they all catch up, and Malcolm talks about amazing things he's done on the road. Your mother turns to you and asks what you've been up to since you've seen them last. Oh, same old, you say, nothing really new going on. Your mother makes a face. Oh, nothing new? How long are you planning at staying at that job of yours? Let's see. We do not know what we want to do. Actually, you start sheepishly, I'm not really sure what I want to do right now. Your mom puts down her fork. So what? You're planning on living the way you do the rest of your life? How would you afford the house on a paycheck? What about kids? Your father interrupts, lightly placing his hand over your mother's. It's okay, Linda. Let the kids be what they are. There's nothing wrong with knowing that you want to do. There's nothing wrong not knowing what you want to do in your 20s. I didn't get into construction until I was nearly 40. Your mother looks across the table at you, unsatisfied with her husband's reasoning. I don't think it's normal for someone at that age to not have a path. You need to think about it hard, or you'll never make anything of yourself. You, Mom! Come on. Malcolm interjects. This emotionally exhausts you. You want to tell her that you are thinking hard and that not knowing what you're doing with yourself bothers you more than it could ever bother her. That sometimes it feels like you're lost in the woods, and that you were to drop dead in your apartment, the world wouldn't notice. You want to make her understand more often than not. You feel like an alien, like there isn't anywhere in this world that feels like a place where you belong, and you have no idea how to fix it or what to do. You wish you could find the words so she would understand that being looked down on for this kills you, and drives home the feeling of being a total outsider. Instead, you get very quiet for the rest of the meal while your mind goes numb. Everything inside you feels exhausted. Okay, so this has changed. Okay, this one went back. You've spent some time on a therapist's couch. You're having difficulty finding the motivation to continue going to your sessions. That wasn't like that before. On the bottom here, you have been prescribed medication, but you doubt that it's having any positive effect on you. So the medication doesn't seem to be working for us, and we're being a little more depressive again. It's a rainy night. You're hurrying through the rain to Alex's apartment at her behest. Behest? Though your pace is quick, the rain is steadily soaking up your pants leg as you traverse the town, and it's darkening your already poor mood. The call came while you were at home after a day of dealing with abnormally frustrating people. You spent the afternoon trying to unwind and get some work on your project done. Alex called and interrupted one of your tried to make progress, get frustrated at not making progress, and have a harder time making progress due to frustration. Repeat. Loops. And you haven't fully shaken off the feeling of being annoyed with yourself from it yet. You knock on her door, and on the third knock you hear her voice call from further in the apartment to come on in. As you cross the threshold, dripping rainwater all the way, you notice that the lights are turned down very low on the side. Sorry, I skipped a line. You notice that the lights are turned down very low in the apartment. You squint to navigate it as you clutch onto your damp umbrella, but end up hitting your shin on the side of the table, bumbling a profanity under your breath. You barely make out Alex emerging from the hallway, clad in what looks like to be a robe with the bare skin of her legs peering out underneath. Why don't you come in and warm up? She asks, in her designated, slightly cheesy, sexy voice. After a beat of silence, she states that, more naturally, my roommates are out of town this weekend, so I thought it'd be nice to have a little fun while they are away. You appreciate her affection, but you're too wrapped in your own negative feedback loops to be in the mood right now. What do? Has anything changed? No. Okay, so let's try to unwind with her. Like, try and see. I don't know if this is gonna talk before we do anything. So let's just go with this option. You look at her standing, barely lit, and notice there's a few candles scattered around the apartment. It occurs to you that she has tried to make the night special for the two of you, even though you have to tie the knot of antisocial frustration in your stomach. Seeing how much she cares for you and wants to try to melt away, so you can show her how much you care now that she's gone through all this trouble. However, you desperately need to shift gears before this is even possible. You look amazing. Let's have a drink together, you suggest, hoping that those will give you time to push you need to get into the mood. You go into the kitchen and pour 2 kinds of drinks. The two of you drinks, not 2 kinds. Trying to focus on letting go of your bad mood. You sit down on the couch next to her and she cuddles up to you instantly. What should we toast to? She asks as she takes her drink. You think for a moment, passing up the cheesy to us option. You say what's on your mind, letting go of your bad day. To tonight. The two of you cheers, and you ask about her day. Conversation turns into flirtatious, and the two of you find yourselves in the bedroom shortly after. You find that you're having trouble getting into things physically with her, and remember that diminished arousal was a possible side effect of your medication. You'd hoped you were a part of the population that wouldn't be affected by it, but it seems as if this is not the case. However, you're still able to enjoy the closeness with Alex and fall asleep happily together. So, nothing has changed yet, as it shows down here, but I was hoping that we were able to talk to her before doing anything, but it seems like we weren't. So, we will continue. It's an early winter evening, and even though it's not particularly late, the time of year has lent the sky an almost prematurely darkened cast. Day after day, just like today, you trudge home from your job you have increasingly come home to hate. On this day, your job misery seems to have reached critical mass, and not even shredding your rain-laden and uncomfortable work clothes helps you to unwind from your work day. Collapse into your couch, blank and numb. While your job always seemed to be an unpleasant reality of existence, it was a position you sort of fell into unexpectedly, never intending to work there long term, and it's getting harder and harder to keep up. While it's certainly not your dream job, you've always sort of stuck it out as a necessity before, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that. Though, you couldn't even begin to imagine what else you could do. You find yourself face to face with a question you just can't ignore. Is your complacency worth even the price of this level of misery? Let's see. We can try and be productive by focusing our efforts on our project, or try to look for another job. Seeing as we do not want this job, and it is something that we don't really need, we can do the project after we search. So we are going to look for another job. You boot up your computer and navigate the local Craigslist. You shift through a myriad of legitimate postings, clear pyramid scams, and the occasional miscategorized random personal ad. You look through the section that is aligned with your current job and start feeling a bit of despair. Would things really be any different if you were simply doing the same thing somewhere else? You email your resume to a few of the postings after coming up with a cover letter that you could use for a variety of things. After you exhausted the postings for the last few days, you head back to the main page. There's a section that's more in line with the project you've been doing, though it's a highly competitive creative field that you don't feel remotely qualified for. Despite that, you click on the section. Scrolling through the postings, you daydream about actually holding a position where you could get to do something more meaningful. Despite feeling completely intimidated by the requirements, you find a listing that you actually want to apply for. You spend an hour crafting a really personal cover letter and really giving your all to the task and nervously sending off the email. You're rather convinced that you'll never hear back from any of these places, but the act of trying to change your situation instead stowing on it actually feels quite freeing. You find yourself trying to stifle the hope that you end up getting the creative job, but it still manages to bubble away. Okay, the bottom one has changed again, and the middle one has changed, but the top one is still saying you're exhausting and you're becoming more and more withdrawn. So I don't know if it's going to continue to say this or if it will gradually get better or worse. So please bear with us. Okay. It's a little past 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. You're at your computer, frustrating levels peaked, rubbing your eyes and sighing heavily. You're working on a project from your job that has stretched out to wit's end, trying to meet a looming deadline. And as it lurks closer and closer, you are seriously doubting your ability to get it done. You've dragging your feet a little at your work due to your complete lack of energy lately, in spite of wanting to do a good job. You find yourself unable to push past it and feel horribly useless of it. You slide your hands off your face and look at the screen as it beeps at you. Hey, are you there? I really need to talk to you about something. You feel like you're getting nowhere with your current task and you probably could use a break. However, you know that you have a history of getting distracted and then losing motivation to pick up on something again afterwards. Seeing as how Attic helped us and we actually went to the doctors because of Attic, and they need to talk to us about something, we're going to answer them. You're feeling like you've hit a brick wall with your task, so why not take a break and help out a friend? Exactly. Hey, what's up? Oh good, you're there. I just found I got cheated on. I don't know what to do. And that's horrible. The two of you talk for a long time, and you lend a shoulder to your friend. You give him space to rant, to cry, and most importantly, to be able to voice his inner turmoil. You give him your full attention and talk to him through what his options for what he does next. You keep him from doing something rash, and the two of you decide that it's best for him to sleep on it before doing anything. Exhausted, he departs for bed and thanks you for being there to talk with him. As you close your I am window, you feel horribly sorry for your friend. but happy that you were able to help. It serves as a tangible reminder that you are capable of being useful to someone instead of being solely a mess that needs everyone else's help. You boot up your work project and find out that you're able to get some solid progress done that night. See, we actually were on track this time. Good. It's a sunny Sunday afternoon. You are in deep thought on the way to your home from therapy. However, you notice that this time you're not in the same negative feedback loops you usually get trapped in when being in this introspective. You realize that, although you still have your bad days, your lows aren't quite as low as they used to be. Your antidepressant bottle rolls across your dashboard as you take a left turn. You've been on this medication for a while now after a period of trying a few different kinds. Though you still have minor side effects, they're overall become unnoticed part of your life. You feel as if your life has generally changed for the better recently, and you begin to wonder if you need them anymore. You don't feel as much despair or hopelessness, and you hate yourself a lot less these days. Maybe it's time to stop taking these, you think. I seem to not really need them anymore. We're gonna continue taking them for a while because even though doctors say like you're doing better or you think you're doing better, doctors usually recommend, from what we've experienced, doctors usually recommend that you continue for a few more until you actually get off the medication. So we're gonna continue. You have the realization that you can't be sure if it's a gentle life change that's making you feel better, or if it's just a sign that the medication is working. You decide against discontinuing your meds. It's not really a lesson you'd like to learn the hard way, and the side effects of this are particularly kind are negligible. The next time you see Dr. Melville, you tell her about this. She informs you that this is a common train of thought for people who have been using the medication to help them manage their depression experience, and that you've managed to dodge a bullet because it generally ends poorly. She also asks you to talk to her first before making any decisions about your medicine in the future. It's yet another sleepless Thursday night. You're at Alex's apartment, wide awake, in bed, as she's sleeping peacefully beside you. She fell asleep hours ago, and you've been laying here, unable to shut your brain up long enough to fall asleep. You've added the feelings of insecurity about your relationship to the rest of the noise in your head keeping you up tonight. It was kind of tense night between the two of you. You arrived a stressful day at work, and as you made dinner together, you barely said a word. You were stuck in your own head and had a hard time really being present with her as your thoughts turned to all the ways you feel like you're deficient at being a good person and beating yourself up mentally for each one. She told you she could tell you were in one of your moods and said that she wouldn't push you, but missed talking to you as the two of you sat on the couch together. You wanted to tell her how much you love her, but you couldn't make the words to come out right and ended up sounding defensive instead. As you lay there next to her now, you trace your fingers across her arm, just lightly enough not to wake her. You still haven't explained your depression to her, or how you've been started seeing a therapist, or that you've been taking medication and it's starting to feel more and more like a secret you're keeping instead of something that she simply doesn't know about you yet. It's becoming more and more apparent that it's impacting your relationship with her, and you feel guilty about this. However, you're also terrified that if she knew exactly how fucked up you are, that she would leave you. You're already worried about that she's the only one with you because she doesn't realize how terrible of a person you are yet. You're afraid that this would be the final thing to expose you. She stirs in her sleep and squints as she opens her eyes. With the confusion that comes with waking up, she asks you if you're awake and if everything's okay. We're going to tell her about the situation. You feel like a jerk for accidentally waking her up, but if you're afraid if you put this off any longer, you won't have the strength to tell her everything later. No, actually, everything isn't okay. Can I tell you something important? Alex sits up, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. For the rest of the night, you lay side by side, holding hands as you tell her everything. You tell her how it's more than just feeling sad sometimes, how you feel trapped by your own mind sometimes, how sometimes you feel nothing at all, and how you can't shake it off. You tell her how you've been started going to therapy and how you feel embarrassed about it and how it's working out for you. She listens the entire time, occasionally asking questions about how this or that works, or asking you to explain something further. She squeezes your hand and tells you she understands and that she's sad you didn't tell her sooner. After laying silent for a moment, the weight of what you did hits you. You desperately want her to say something, to tell you how she's feeling about all this, but you're too afraid of what the answer would be to ask. You start convincing yourself that now she knows everything and she's going to leave. There's no way someone can deal with how you really are. So how can I help? What do you need me to do? She asks. You think for a second, and the answer comes to you that fills with despair. I honestly don't know. I wish I knew how to fix this, but I don't know what you can do anything. I think it's something I just have to live with. She looks at you with sad eyes before kissing you on the forehead. Then I'll live it with you. I don't know how you could possibly love me. She rolls over and wraps her arms around your neck, settling her head on top of yours. You don't need to. Just know that I do. Here we go. You are in therapy with a good counselor. You're doing cognitive behavioral therapies techniques, and they are starting to help. Your medication is helping you keep the edge off, and keep some of the darker and more negative feedback loops far from being as prevalent. The first one is still same. It's a Friday night and you're laying across your bed feeling pathetic. As you're leaving work tonight, a group of coworkers asked if you wanted to join them for drinks. Feeling antisocial and put on the spot, you declined. You have a habit of doing this. You're often so convinced that you are weird and are terrible, and that any invitation to hang out will end in disappointment for those inviting you. You never feel like you know how to act in group outings, and you feel like a total creep since it seems to come so natural to anyone who isn't you. You find yourself petrified of breaking some unknown social rule that you don't often go out. Now, however, you find yourself alone at home. Your brain has begun telling you how pathetic and sad you are just for being unable to be the normal person and go out with nice people. You can't figure out why you just can't go out and meet people and enjoy yourself. At the same time, you're also feeling like no one else would possibly want to go hang out if they really knew you, because you're dull and weird anyway. You try your typical strategy to boot up Netflix to distract yourself from these feelings, but frustration with yourself builds, and you realize you have to do something else with your night. Anything else to take your mind off of how lonely you are feeling right now. What do you do? Let's play with our cat since we got it as a companion to try and help us and we haven't actually played with her yet. So we will play with our cat for tonight, and next time we will try to engage socially. Nights like this, you're very glad you made the call to become a cat owner. Feeling too socially burnt out to interact with other people, you go find your cat. You get her to chase a laser pointer for a solid 30 minutes before she tires herself out. She pads over to you and collapses in the heat in your lap, purring loudly, though initially she hated being picked up. You carry her over to her desk with you, and she doesn't object. Setting her down in your lap, you completely surf the internet before heading to bed. Having her here with you has a calming effect. It makes you feel a lot less alone. It's a cold Saturday afternoon. You just arrived at Alex's apartment and you're happy to finally see her after a week of absence due to your schedules not lining up due to work and school. You hung her in the doorway, but she breaks away sooner than normal and sits down on the couch as you take off your sneakers and lay them in the usual place, right next to hers. There's something I was hoping we could talk about actually, she says. You instantly worry and begin that you're being blindsided by a breakup conversation due to the sudden shift in tone, but she quickly smiles and puts one of you at ease once she sees all the color leave your face. It's nothing bad, I promise. With that, she leads you over to the couch and sits on the other end of it facing you. So I hope this doesn't freak you out, and if you feel like things are going too fast, just tell me. She talks faster than usual and fidgets. We seem to have a lot of weeks like this, and they really suck. I was thinking I'd ask, since things are so strong with us, what are your thoughts about maybe moving in together? It takes a few seconds to sink in, and leaves you a bit shocked when it does. You're worried she wanted to spend a lot less time to you, not more. Do you want to, you ask? Well, yeah, I do. I mean, we'd have to sort out logistics and everything, but those are all things we can take care of. You start to walk through the steps of imagining of you two living together. You love the thought of being able to wake up next to her every day and seeing her every so often. However, the more you picture it, the more a few concerns begin to become apparent. These things she is insulated from, like the days you don't feel like you can even get out of bed, the nights your medication keeps you up from being able to sleep, all of those moments you're stuck staring at the wall, completely out of energy and feeling nothing. How would she handle that? How quickly would she want to get away? So, she starts, what do you think? We're going to tell her about the concerns and we'll try to discuss them. You're really worried that if Alex were to live with you, she wouldn't want to be able to deal with your days of being unable to get out of bed, or nights where you can't do nothing but stare at a wall and panic. Even though you've discussed your situation with her, you still fear that she doesn't realize the depths of how bad it gets. It's one thing for you to detail how you feel sometimes, and for her to see it pop up occasionally. It's an entirely different situation for it to be something that she has to live with alongside you. Well, I'd like to, but I think the best if we talk about it a bit more before coming to a decision. Though she seems a little defeated, you make it clear that you're not making an excuse and actually mean that you want to talk. You reiterate a lot of what you told Alex that night, although she gets a little defensive and tells you that she knows all that already. She confirms that she's willing to help you sort through the issues. I feel like you forget I love you sometimes. I know that you'll be bad days and I'd rather work through them with you. We can figure out all of this together. Her words sway you, and you can't help but hold her close to you. Alright, these have changed. So, you are definitely still depressed, but things are getting better. Whatever you're doing seems to be working. You really feel like you're taking steps to effect positive changes in your life. You now seem to enjoy seeing your therapist. Between giving you a chance to talk about things and the CBT required techniques she shares with you, you find your sessions extremely helpful. You have been taking your medication regularly, and while you were skeptical at first, it's hard to argue with the fact that you're feeling better than you have in a long time. It's December and you've returned to your parents' house to celebrate the holidays with your family. Out of the living room window, you can see a gentle flurry of snow drifting down to meet the pristine blanket of white from yesterday's unexpected Christmas Eve snowfall. And you quietly laugh to yourself of how incredibly cliché it seems. Still, as you sit down to dinner, you can't help but notice how being surrounded by family and the overly kitschy atmosphere your mom's decorations have created, and actually have made you feel relaxed and almost comfortable. Your mom is running around frantically checking the oven and the stockings and just generally trying to family time it up, while your dad sits at the head of the table drinking a beer and laughing with your brother Malcolm. His wife Karen is there too, whom you've always gotten along well with. And your parents even agreed to let you bring your kitten along. She's been darting in and out of people's legs, hopping into laps all night. Adorable. As you thoughtfully munch away at your turkey, listening to the conversations around you, your thoughts drift back over the last few months. You think about how hard it's gotten, relying over in your head some of your worst as well as some of your best memories. It seems like all of these things just came to a head over the past few months, with a sudden flurry of relationship turmoil and professional anxiety. social stress, and above all, an omnipresent sense of weight that it seems to have just recently become aware of. You're drawn out of your reverie by your dad's familiar booming laugh as some cheesy comment Malcolm made seems to have hit its mark. Sitting at the table, you're suddenly immensely glad for the chance to be able to ignore everything for an evening and not have a struggle trying to explain yourself for once. Fortunately, everyone seems to be content with laughing at each other's jokes and discussing favorite sports teams. And for a while, you think you'll be able to get through dinner without embarrassing personal interruptions. But no sooner did the thought cross your mind than the table conversations trickle off, leaving a slightly awkward silence descend upon the dinners. "So how have you been doing these days?" your mom asks you pointedly. It's such a simple question, and one that you seem to have answered countless times recently. But you take a moment to collect your thoughts, then looking up, you take a deep breath. You never really thought of yourself as a fighter, and even to say it now sounds hokey. But looking back at the past few months where you were now, it really does feel like you've endured an immense struggle. And you look at where you are now with a sense of something that isn't quite pride. You still hate your job and find it unpleasant, but you're surprised to find that you're going into work every day is no longer a momentous challenge. You started adopting some clever techniques, like taking short 2-minute breaks every hour to break up the monotony, and you now view your job as just 8 short hours of your day. A compartmentalization technique Dr. Melville told you about you found actually works quite well. You know this job isn't what you do want to do for the rest of your life, and you started actively looking for other positions, even attending a couple of preliminary interviews. You've started making the effort to go out with your friends more. While the social scene still makes you very uncomfortable sometimes, you're more and more able to let yourself enjoy the company of your friends. In fact, your relationship with many of them has increased over the past little while. You still definitely have days where you flake out or don't feel like hanging out, but for the most part, your friends are understanding and appreciate your communication. By far, the biggest change you've noticed in your life has been your relationship with Alex. You were terrified about talking with her about everything at first, but looking back, it feels like it's only strengthened your relationship. She was always supportive of you emotionally, but lately, the two of you have been even more in sync, and it's really starting to feel like you're building a life together. It even seems the two of you have been making more concerted effort to sync up your schedules, and have been spending more and more downtime with each other. Pretty soon, you think moving in together may be a really very real possibility. Dr. Melville has commented on how you'll be doing, on how well you seem to be doing, and whether a result of therapy, the medication, or both, you can't help but agree. With all that seems to have improved recently, it's sometimes difficult for you to think that the fact that you still have bad days, sometimes even really bad days. They severe as a stark reminder of the fact that this will be something you will likely have to deal with for the rest of your life. Depression is a battle, and though you're certainly ahead in the fight, you know that the battle isn't going to be over. Sometimes even Alex can tell when things are going rough, despite your best efforts to the contrary. While you know that your depression can never be cured, you have a very strong support network in your friends, even Malcolm, and armed with a newfound confidence in your friends and family, you accept that the road may be rocky. It is at least not solitary. You meet your mom's gaze from across the table and muster up a smile. "I'm good, Mom," you tell her. She says nothing, but you can feel her smile from across the room. So, we made it to the end. Thank you for sticking around and watching this, and actually understanding some things that happen through a person's life when they go through depression. And may or may not be for some people, but it does happen. And this is actually a really good thing. There were multiple things you could have done, and I will see about leaving a link to the description below, so you can see exactly what happens for everyone. You can choose what you want to choose to see if anything changes, if it gets worse, or if it gets better than what we had just done today. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm not going to say leave a like because this was a struggle, not an actual video, and we hope you actually understand some things that happen in people's lives from today on. So, again, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.